Hey everybody, welcome back to Ravenstead. It's time for another build. I'm going to continue on with our Scrubland terrain. I'm going to keep the base the same size, but this time the hill is going to be built up of several layers, alternating in 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch pieces of foam. So I want to have a little mine shaft in the side of this hill. So just using glue sparingly here because I am going to cut out the piece with a hot wire cutter, and then do quite a bit of work with the craft knife. So I've got the basic shape that I want cut out, and then after I do all the trimming and cutting that I want, I'm going to put a couple of screws up in the bottom to kind of help hold it all together. I'm going to use a craft knife here. I don't cut myself, so don't worry about that. Always with these builds, I don't know quite where to start, so I kind of fiddle around and then just kind of jump into it. So, be careful if you're using the craft knife, but you kind of have to just let go and get in there and start hacking away. Those little horizontal cuts are really important to kind of sell the idea of a striated stone look. And then I'm just using a pair of pliers there to dig out that mine shaft a little bit. So I'm going to run those screws up in there. That kind of holds it together and also gives the piece a little bit of weight so it doesn't get knocked around so easily at the game table. I'm going to texture the edges of all the stone areas with a brass brush. I like to use the brass as opposed to steel. It doesn't cut into it quite as aggressively as a steel brush would. Make some lumber for the entrance of our mine shaft. So making some long, shallow cuts, just cutting off a strip, and then using that brass brush to put in kind of a wood grain texture. It's easier to do the edge there if you have a whole stack of them. Gives a pretty good look. So we're just going to put in a couple of timbers here to give an indication of a mine entrance. And just hot gluing those in. If you're going to use a lot of wooden structures on the piece, make sure you under prime. So it was a little hard to get paintbrush back up in there, but not too bad. Now I want to add a little bit of like mining tailings coming out of this mine shaft. So I'm going to put down some PVA glue and then sprinkle down some cat litter. And that'll give us a nice gravel effect. I like to use clay-based, the bentonite cat litter, as it soaks into the glue pretty well. And I like the size of it too. You can also crush it a little bit if you needed finer sand, and it's not as annoying as quartz sand. It's a little easier to clean up. And that's just a little watered down PVA glue. I'll just kind of go over it, and then I'm just grinding up a little bit of that cat litter between my fingers just to give a finer texture. Everything's dry, so we'll go ahead and paint this out with Mod Podge and black acrylic paint. This will kind of lock everything down and then gives us a good base for our shadows when we start our dry brushing. So I'm really having to scrub that in. You don't want any of that pink foam showing later on, but if something gets past you, you can always put a clump of foliage in there and cover it up. It's no big deal. Alright, some dry brushing. I'm going over this with a medium brown. I'm going to try and match it up to the last build I did, the Scrubland Overlook. And then using kind of a golden brown and just applying these in kind of layers. Give it a little bit of a geological effect here. And any of the flat surfaces, I try to match up with the striations of the layers. That's a little terracotta there. That's a very, very bright color, so I kind of used that one fairly sparingly. And then once all the dry brushing is done, I'll go over this whole piece with some washes. We'll get to that in just a minute. Can't forget the timbers either, so we'll get those highlighted. Going to use a little bit of light tan on the piece to really kind of match it up. And that'll hit all the highlights and really build the shadows too in the piece. And you got to get that gravel. Kind of makes it pop right out. It's pretty cool. And then a little extra on the timbers. I wanted those to look really like sun bleached. And then that longer one there, I think that's going to be our rotten plank. We'll get back to that in a minute. Just going over it a little bit more with that golden brown, just to kind of bring all the textures back. And then we'll do our washes. This first wash is a burnt umber acrylic ink mixed with water, about 50-50. I do like to put a couple drops of jet dry in there, and that kind of helps it flow and cuts down on the bubbles. So I get that all over the piece. And then a little bright green wash. Now I'm doing this wet on wet technique, so the green is kind of mixing with the burnt umber wash, and it'll give us a kind of an olive color. You know, this is a transitional piece, so we're kind of going from a woodland biome into a desert biome, so this is the area in between. A little bit of Vallejo rust wash, just splashing that on and then painting it around. That kind of takes the edge off of that terracotta paint. Really blends in pretty well. Just play around with it and get it just the way you want. Alright, let's do some bushes in here. Again, this being a transitional area, I've got a little bit of green, like a sagebrush in there. And then I'm planting in some tan shrubbery. I kind of featured that on the last video I did. You can check it out on how I made the scrub brush. And that just goes in there. I make a hole with a pencil and then hot glue them right in. A couple more bushes in here. We're almost done. There we go. And I wanted that rotten plank to look a little different. We were using moss for that to give it kind of a mossy, rotten look. But I went outside and found a stick with some lichen growing on it. So after sterilizing that in the oven for a little bit, I just pulled off a few pieces. I want to play around with this technique a little bit more. Maybe blend it in a coffee grinder. See if we can get the texture a little finer. But I'm just taking little flakes of this lichen and sticking them on there, kind of like they're mushrooms growing out of the rotten wood. I think the overall effect kind of goes, but tell me what you think. Almost done. Just another little piece there. You can see the shadows really kind of hold up for the entrance of the mine. Let me spin it for you. You can get a closer look. Well, there it is. Scrubland Mine. Good place to transition from overland to underground. Good place for a dungeon. Appreciate you watching another video. Make sure you leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Tell me what you think about the new rotten plank. It'll be interesting to see what we can come up with for our desert terrain. Maybe a rotten cactus. Who knows? Thanks for watching.